Engage.
Hi guys, this is my movie tag video and I'm finally getting around to it. I was tagged by TameLeo68, who's a YouTuber that I met on here about a month ago. And basically what I'm going to go through is I have a list of 20 questions about my favorite movies and that kind of thing that I'm going to go through and answer. Number one is favorite all-time movie, and I had a really hard time with this because I don't think anyone actually has an all-time favorite movie. I think most people probably have like a top 20 list or a top 10 list, but it's really rough narrowing it down to just one movie. So the movie that I've picked is On the Waterfront, and it's definitely one of my top favorites. I think it was put out in '54. It was directed by Elia Kazan, who also did A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Water, or East of Eden, which are two of my other favorite movies. And I hadn't realized before I started actually looking into On the Waterfront that I actually liked a lot of other things by this director. But On the Waterfront, it stars Marlon Brando, and I've always been a big Marlon Brando fan. I mean, he's made some bad movies, but the movie that he's good in, he's just absolutely amazing. And I think that's probably one of my favorite things about On the Waterfront that drew me to it, is that it has Marlon Brando in it. But it's such a fantastic movie. I mean, the acting is amazing. It also has Lee J. Cobb in it, and it has Carl Malden, who I've also seen in some other movies, and I really like both of them. And just everything about this movie is just so well done. Like, it's so well done to the point that it makes it look effortless. Like, just the writing, the casting, just everything about it. The plot is amazing. So I think that's definitely one of my favorite movies. So number two is favorite scene from that movie. And this is one of the reasons that I picked this movie, is just because I love this scene so much and I wanted to talk about this specific scene. It's this part in the movie where Marlon Brando is sitting in the car, he's talking to his brother Charlie, and I can't remember the actor who plays his brother, but it's someone else that I've seen in a few movies. And the plot of this movie is that Marlon Brando, he plays like this ex-boxer, like prize fighter, and he got caught up in the Union working on the docks, and because they had bet against him on a fight, he threw a fight. And now he's got it okay because he's in good with like the bosses of the Union, but he realizes that he could have been so much more and he could have had such a great career. So he's talking to his brother and he's saying, "You should have looked out for me. You know, you should have looked out for me just a little bit, because I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody." And I love this scene so much because it's like he's finally realizing and admitting that he's not happy with how his life has turned out. He could have done so much more with it. And he's not really putting it on his brother. He's not saying it's his brother's fault. But I think he's more just like lamenting what he could have been if someone had been there to kind of look out for him, and if he hadn't been on his own making these decisions. And I think it's kind of a turning part in the movie, because it's when he kind of starts to go against what the Union is telling him to do, and he starts making his own decisions. And it's such a fantastic scene. Question number three is favorite actor or actress. For this one, I'm just going with favorite actor because there are a lot of actresses that I like, but I feel like I tend to have favorite actors more than I tend to have favorite actresses. And for this one, I have to go with Paul Newman. I absolutely love so many of Paul Newman's movies, and a lot of them I was trying to figure out when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for favorite movie. I was considering a lot of his movies, because like The Hustler, HUD, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Cool Hand Luke. He's just in so many fantastic movies, and like all actors, he's in some bad movies, and he's in some bad roles, but I feel like he always brings something special to a role, and he always does such a good job with it. And in fact, if you look at his career, like even from when he first started out to when he was getting a lot older, he was making movies for so many decades, and he made so many fantastic movies. And it's just like, you watch one of his movies, and I don't know, I'm not good at describing how I feel about these actors or these movies, because it's not something that I genuinely put a lot of thought into. But when you watch a Paul Newman movie, it's like you're transported to somewhere else, because he gets so into the role, and he gets so into the character. Two other movies is The Sting and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You know, he can do serious and he can do funny, like he can do anything. So he's definitely, I don't know if I can say he's my favorite actor, but he's definitely really far up there. Number 4 is most annoying actor. And for most annoying actor, I do think that there's a difference between most annoying and an actor who I think is the worst actor. Because if it was worst actor, then I think I would have a harder time, because there's so many bad actors out there, obviously. But for most annoying, I have to go with Tobey Maguire. It's not that I genuinely think he's that horrible. It's just everything about him just grates on my nerves. I haven't really seen a whole lot of his movies. I've seen the Spider-Man movies, I've seen some other ones, but it's just everything about him, just the way he talks, the way he moves his head, just genuinely everything about him, it just really annoys me. Okay. You can come in if you want. This is my sister, Sarah. I'm talking about how much I hate Tobey Maguire. This is Sarah. Do you want to actually talk? Or
no. Well, if you have a question, you can interview me.
No, I was just talking about how much I hate Tobey Maguire.
I hate him so much.
Yeah, I think I think I got my hate of him from you.
And Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah, and they're both in the Spider-Man, so that's why that movie's just so awful.
Okay, well, good luck.
Thanks! Ladies and gentlemen, that was a cameo from Sarah Lewis. But, yeah, that was my sister. I'm home for break. But anyway, moving on. Number 5 is Best Director, or Favorite Director. And for this, I am going with a very unoriginal choice, because I'm picking Steven Spielberg. And I think so many people have Steven Spielberg as their favorite director, or he would be the director of their favorite movie. Because he's done so many fantastic movies. I was looking through like a few different directors that I really like, and before I actually looked at his credits on IMDb, I really didn't realize that he had directed all of these movies. I mean, he's done Indiana Jones, Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Schindler's List, and he's done just so many fantastic movies that have just become such a huge part of like the movie culture, I guess. And it's just amazing because he knows exactly how to make a movie. He knows exactly like the actors to pick, the way to shoot a scene. It's mind-blowing that one person can have made all of these fantastic movies and have done it in such a perfect way. Like, you look at his movies and you cannot think of any other way that you would have chosen to do it, because it's just absolutely perfect. I think he also did like Catch Me If You Can, which was a completely, like, I had no idea that he did that movie, because he's just such a vast array of movies, and it's like, how can you make all these different kinds of movies and yet still manage to make them all good and make them all so unique? So yeah, he's definitely my favorite director. George Lucas might be a close second just because of Star Wars, and then American Graffiti, which is a fantastic movie. Number 6 is Guilty Pleasures, and I really can't think of that many movies which I honestly would feel kind of ridiculous about watching, because I like to pretend that I have good movie taste. But one of them would have to be Pride and Prejudice, either the movie version with Keira Knightley or the BBC version with Colin Firth. And it's not that I think that they're bad movies, I think that they're really well done, and I really like the book. I've read the book maybe like 4 times. But it's just the number of times that I've seen these movies, it's the ridiculous and the guilty pleasure part, because I've watched them so many times. I've watched the actual movie version more than I've watched the BBC miniseries, because the miniseries is 6 hours long. But still, it's one of those things that I watch because I know that it's kind of mindless and it's kind of silly, even though it's well done. And it's just something that you can just watch and forget about everything else. And I guess it is kind of like a chick flick in that way. But that would have to be my guilty pleasure. Because I know it's a good movie, but it's not a very deep, really, movie. And it doesn't have a whole lot going into it. And it's well made, but it's not something that you're going to watch like, oh my god, like, I feel like so good about watching this movie. And it's just so well done. Like, I feel so like intellectually challenged after watching this movie. Number 7 is favorite tearjerker. I honestly could not think of anything for this category because I'm not a big fan of tearjerkers. I can't think of any movie that I like that I would classify as a tearjerker. And there are movies that I've cried during, but it's not something that you're just gonna be sitting there sobbing the entire movie, because I don't like those kind of movies. They always seem kind of forced and kind of put on, and that the only reason that you're watching this movie is that you can cry. And you know, that can be kind of cathartic, I guess, but it always just, it was like a plot device. It didn't really mean anything, because you know that this movie is just designed to be sad, and if the sole purpose of a movie is so that it can be sad, then there's no really point in making that movie anyway. At least that's always been my opinion. I'm sure if I really thought about it, I could think of a few movies that I would be tearjerkers, but like I really, you know, there aren't any that I would like, I sit down regularly to watch just so I can have a good cry, because I never do that. So number 8 is a character that scared you most from a movie, and this one, it's less of a character than like just a group, because I'm going with the Borg from Star Trek, and especially from Star Trek First Contact. And it's not really a character in the normal sense, or it's not really even that scary in the normal sense, but the Borg always terrified me as a child. I mean, from when I started watching Star Trek to when I actually got old enough to, you know, stop being scared by someone from a TV show, it was terrifying. And especially the First Contact movie. I mean, the first time I watched that, I couldn't get more than halfway through it, and I had to just leave the room and stop watching, and it took me like a couple years before I got up the courage to try it again and actually sit through it. Because something about them has always just, I don't know, it really gets to me. Because something that really freaks me out more than anything else is the idea of like human experimentation or genetic manipulation or something like that. Like either doing like medical experiments on people or just doing, you know, doing something to them like that. And movies with that type of thing, I cannot handle. I'm not good with gore or excessive violence, but I can handle it better than I can with, you know, just straight up like I don't know, I can't even think about it. And that's kind of what the Borg is, because, you know, they assimilate people, but they do kind of like implant them with stuff. And that always gets to me. Plus, I think it was something about the lack of individuality, like you lose yourself into the collective. That always freaked me out as a kid. And now that I think about it, it's kind of an odd thing to be scared of, because I'm always been more scared of the idea of things rather than the visual. Like, if something is visually scary, I can handle it. But it's more like the mental manipulation part that always freaks me out. So definitely the Borg is what I was most terrified about. I would have nightmares about them as a kid, like quite consistently actually. So what am I on? I'm on number 9, which is a movie you love that everyone hates. And I really tried, but I couldn't think of anything for this category. And I think it's because, you know, people talk about movies that they like. And they talk about movies that they know are really bad, but they like anyway. It's kind of like it's so bad it's good kind of thing. But movies that everyone genuinely hates don't get discussed that much. And so, like, I can't really think of anything that I love that I would think of other people hating. Because, I mean, there are, like, the cult classics, like The Room and stuff like that, but it's not more that everyone hates it. Well, not everyone loves these movies, but a lot of people love these movies just because they're bad. So I couldn't really go with something like that. So a movie that everyone genuinely hates that I love, like I couldn't come up with anything for that. The next category is a movie you hate that everyone loves. And for this I went with an admittedly easy target, because I'm going with, in general, you know, like all Nicholas Sparks movies, but specifically I'm going to go with Dear John, which is based off of Nicholas Sparks' book. Like, I've never been a fan of Nicholas Sparks, his movies. I've seen bits of The Notebook. I haven't seen the whole thing. I can't remember the titles of his other movies, but I have seen a decent number of them. And it's just, I've never been a fan of those. I don't really, I like romantic comedies or romances, but it kind of goes along with the tearjerkers. I don't like it when it's a romance that's intentionally like heart-wrenching or sad, just to make you cry, and just for the sole purpose of just like being an emotional roller coaster, because it always seems kind of forced. So for this I'm gonna have to go with, I think, Dear John with Channing Tatum. But really it'd be pretty much any movie based on Nicholas Sparks' book. And I know this is an easy target, but really I couldn't think of any other movie that I genuinely hate Because, you know, most movies, I mean, I won't like them, but I just won't watch them. There aren't a lot of movies that I just really cannot stand. And even less that, you know, everyone else loves that I hate. Number 11 is favorite movie duo. And for this one, I thought about it for maybe 5 seconds. So I was like, oh, I have to go with Paul Newman and Robert Redford. And I said earlier that I love Paul Newman, and I absolutely love Robert Redford. And I don't know, they were at least in 2 movies together that I know of. There might have been more, but I don't know if I would pick them from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid or them from the movie The Sting, because those are 2 of my really favorite movies. Because in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, like, they were just so fantastic together. Like, I love the way that they play off together, even though, you know, they were kind of 2 completely different characters. They work so well together. And in The Sting, it was made later on, because they were a bit older in that. But they do such a good job together. And, like, I know that they were friends in real life, and I feel like you can really see that relationship going on screen in both of those movies. Because they play off each other so well, and it's just so entertaining to watch. Moving on, because I don't want this to take too much time, and there are different questions that I do want to spend more time on. So for number 12 is animated film, and I have to go with The Lion King for this. I mean, whenever I was a kid, there were different, like, Disney movies, different animated movies that I liked more. But as I've gotten older, I feel like The Lion King has just really become, like, a staple. Because, you know, it is such a great movie. Like, everyone loves The Lion King. Whenever I was a kid, I liked this movie called The Swan Princess, which was a cartoon. I watched it, like, last year, and I realized that it was absolutely horrible, which was honestly kind of depressing. I really like the animated movie The Iron Giant. Gosh, now that I'm talking about this, I'm going to be thinking of all these other movies, animated movies, that I really like, because I love The Iron Giant. I don't know, I feel like if I thought about it for a long time, there would be way too many to list. So I'm just going to go with The Lion King, because, you know, it's such a classic movie. And I know that they went on to make Lion King 2, which I have. And they had 1.5, which I don't think I ever actually saw that one. You know, Lion King 2, it was alright, but it didn't really have, you know, the Lion King feel to it. And I think it was because, you know, most people my age at least, they saw Lion King as a child. And whenever you watch a movie as a kid, you know, it just becomes such a huge part of your life. And then if you would try to go back and watch it as an adult, or if you were to watch, you know, like a sequel as an adult, it just doesn't have the same feel to it. But, you know, whenever you go back and watch that movie, it's like you're recapturing a bit of your childhood. And I think that's what The Lion King does for me, and probably does for a lot of other people. So, number 13 is actor or actress celebrity crush. And for this one, I'm going to have to go with David Tennant, who he played Doctor Who. He doesn't anymore. But he played the Doctor in Doctor Who. He's in some British shows that I've watched. He was in Blackpool. I know he was in the 4th Harry Potter movie as, you know, the crazed Barty Crouch Jr. But, you know, I love David Tennant. He's just, I mean, he's a really good actor. And I love some of his stuff that he's been in. Like, I love Doctor Who. And that's probably the main reason that he is my, like, celebrity crush or whatever. Because I started watching Doctor Who when he was in it. And I try not to go all fangirly on him. Like, I genuinely put in a decent effort. And it's made easier by the fact that there are so many David Tennant fangirls out there. It's like, oh my god, it's Doctor Who, he's amazing. But I have a bit of that in me, I admit. And I'm kind of embarrassed admitting this on the internet. But I talk about him enough around my house that I totally deserve this. So, like, I mean, I recognize that he's a great actor, and, I mean, he's not a great actor, he's a pretty good actor, and I haven't really seen as much of his stuff that I would like to have seen, because he does do a fair bit of stage work. Like, he was in Hamlet with Patrick Stewart, which I watched a few years ago, and I couldn't get through it. I don't know why, because, like, I just started watching Doctor Who at the time. I was like, oh, David Tennant's in this with Patrick Stewart, who I of course love because it's Captain Picard. So like, I think I'll watch this. Like, I watched a few minutes of it and I couldn't get into it. But then like a few months ago I went back and watched this Hamlet again. And like they both do a really good job in it. I'm rambling, and I didn't intend to, you know, start talking about random David Tennant stuff on this. Like, I know he also has, like, buggy eyes, but it just kind of comes across as adorable. Like, it's okay. You know, my sister calls him a bush baby, which I can definitely see. But it's just, you know, part of the weird, thin Scottish dude charm he has going on. Number 14 is favorite villain. And I have to go with another Star Trek one for this, because I have to go with Khan from The Wrath of Khan. Now, like, I watched this movie as a kid, but coming back, I watched it just recently, a few years ago, and it always has struck me how single-minded Khan is in this movie. I mean, he was in the series, and he was an interesting character in the episode that he was in, but you get to the movie, and at this point, his hatred of Kirk has escalated to such a level that's all he can think about. Like, he is willing to sacrifice absolutely anything just to get revenge. And it's kind of admirable in a way, because I love this scene at the end of the movie where, you know, like, him on his ship and then the Enterprise are in like this nebula or this cloud, and they can't really see each other. Both of their ships are kind of falling apart. Most of Khan's crew is dead. He's all bloody. I think the Enterprise, they might be offering to help him or something, or he was trying to contact them. And he's on the bridge, and I think he quotes Moby Dick. He's like, from hell's heart, something, and then from hatred of hell, I spit my last breath at thee, or something. I know he said, I spit my last breath at thee, which is it applies so perfectly. Because, like, he is going to spend his last ounce of strength, and, you know, even though he's injured and he's bloody and he hurt his arm somehow and his entire crew is gone, he is going to put whatever he has into still trying to kill Kirk and still trying to get revenge. And it's such a perfect villain moment. It's such a perfect quality for a villain to have. It's like, I know that other villain movies have had much more intricate motivations, and there have been much scarier villains. But I've always loved it when it was just like that single-minded revenge. That's all he wants. He just wants to kill Kirk, and he doesn't care what he has to do it. He's going to give up everything just to get revenge and just to, like, hurt Kirk as badly as he can. And it's such a great movie. And his character just makes that movie so much better. Alright, so number 15 is most surprising movie. And I have to go with The Sixth Sense for this one. Because, like, you know, it does have, you know, like, the great twist, and everyone knows about The Sixth Sense. But something that, you know, okay, so the reason that I like this movie, and that it is the most surprising movie for me, is that I watched The Sixth Sense within the last year. And I'm not sure when it came out. It came out a while ago. But somehow I managed, ever since it came out, to never learn the twist from The Sixth Sense. And so I watched it last year, and I had no idea what was going to happen. So I'm watching it, oh my god, this is such a good movie. Like, this is such a fantastic, it's so well done, and it's such a great twist. And it is, you know, so surprising. But I was just so excited that I actually got to watch this movie, like, without knowing what was going to happen and without having it tainted by, you know, people talking about it or whatever. You know, it's one of those twists that people talk about in movies. The Sixth Sense, you know, it's well known for being, like, such a great, you know, moment in the plot when you find out what's actually happening. It's like Citizen Kane when you find out that Rosebud is a sled. You know, it's like, it's just that iconic movie moment. And, like, it's such a great movie, too. So, you know, I do love it, and part of it is just that, like, I was just so excited that I actually got to watch it eventually without knowing what was going to happen. Number 16 is least favorite director. And I feel bad, but this is another one that I can't think of an answer for, because I think that you pay attention to your favorite directors. You pay attention to them because you want to know what they're going to put out next, and you can kind of tell your favorite movies, like, this seems similar to this movie. You look it up, and oh, it was the same director, that makes sense. But for least favorite directors, I feel like you don't really keep track of that kind of thing. Like, I know movies that I don't care for and movies that I don't like, but none of them have really had the same director. And, you know, just to pick a movie that I don't like and saying, oh, this is my least favorite director, doesn't really seem fair either, because for all I know, like, he or she could have put out some decent movies. Sorry, there's a plane going over. I'm not sure if you can hear that. But, you know, he or she could have put out some good movies, and I'm not going to say that it's my least favorite director just because of this one movie that I happen to hate. So, you know, least favorite director, it's kind of like a least favorite actor kind of thing. It's like you might have them, but you never pay attention enough to actually brand them as your least favorite. So number 17 is a favorite movie adaptation of a book. You know, there's so many great movies that have been made out of books. I mean, East of Eden is a great adaptation from Steinbeck's book. And there's so many, you know, so many books that have been made into great movies. But for this one, I have to go with Lord of the Rings. And I'm not going to pick one of the three to be a favorite because, you know, all the books were pretty much, it was pretty much the same book strung together, and all three of the movies, they were made in such a similar style. So I'm just going to go with a trilogy as a whole. There are parts in the books that I kind of wish they'd put into the movies, and there's parts in the movies that they put in that I'm kind of left wondering why they put that in there in the first place. But overall, I think it was a really good adaptation. Because Peter Jackson, he didn't try to make it just like a scene-for-scene thing from the book. Or he didn't try to, you know, capture every single thing that happened. And if he had tried to done that, it would have been boring. It wouldn't have worked. Because, you know, the way Lord of the Rings is, they spend over half the time just having, you know, these long conversations about things. And so much of the book is his descriptions of things, or the way he writes that make you feel like you're in Lord of the Rings. Or you're in Middle-earth. And so all of that would be really hard to capture in a movie. So, you know, Peter Jackson went off and he did his own thing with it. I don't know, I think that's a fire alarm. It sounds like someone's cooking. Just give me a second and I'll go turn it off. So someone was cooking fish, but I took down the fire alarm and I took out the battery. So we should be good now. This is what happens when I film at home. Instead of hearing random people talking out in my common room, you can hear my sisters running by and fire alarms going off. But I was talking about Lord of the Rings. Yeah, Peter Jackson, he made it his own, and he did his own thing with it, and he still managed to capture the heart of it without putting in all of the details. And yeah, he changed some things. He changed the way some characters were represented, and he took out some parts, and he cut out some, not major things, but some parts that I really liked in the book. He cut out from the movies, and yet I absolutely love those movies, because even though he changes things, it still has the same feel as the book. And I don't know how many people could have done that, honestly. I don't know how many directors there are that could have faithfully, you know, captured it and done such a good job with it. And it's one of those movies that it almost seems like an anomaly, because it was made by the right person at the right time. And it's just like, it's almost like you feel grateful that someone managed to put together this movie and to do such a good job with it, because it could so easily have not have happened, and like someone else could have directed it, or they could have gotten someone else for this part, and it would have been good, and I would have liked it, but it wouldn't have been what it is today. And I mean, that's why it's my favorite adaptation of a book, because it's so perfect. It's what it should have been. Even though it wasn't exactly like the book, it was enough like the book that it got its soul almost. Like, I know I'm being really cheesy about this, but I feel so strongly about this book and about these movies. Like, Lord of the Rings is one of my all-time favorite books, and the movies, I'm so happy that it's turned out to be one of my favorite movies. We're getting towards the end. Let me see. Movie that number 18 is a movie that had a significant impact on your life. And for this one, I'm gonna go with Star Wars A New Hope. And it's not so much that, you know, the movie itself, like the plot, had a big impact on me. It's more when I saw it and, you know, what I thought about it at the time. Because I watched Star Wars when I was 6 years old. It was at my first house I lived in. My sister got the box set trilogy on VHS for her, I don't know, she might have been like 10 at the time, for her birthday. And me and my mom and dad and my two sisters, we all went upstairs and climbed in my parents' bed. And they had this little tiny TV up there. And we watched all three of the movies on Christmas Day. And you know, it's such a great memory, but more than that, it's one of the first genuine movies that I feel like I saw, like that wasn't like a kid's movie or a cartoon. You know, at least it's the first one that I genuinely remember seeing. And like, I loved those movies so much. You know, for years we would watch one of them every Friday night, and it would be such a big deal. Like, we'd argue about which one we would watch because like we each had our favorite. But it's like, it's the first time that I actually became aware, you know, of movies. I don't want to say that it's the first time I became aware of, like, I'm not expressing this well, just give me a second. Like, for example, you know, Harrison Ford is Han Solo. And that was the first time I actually liked an actor. Like, as more than just like a character in a movie. Like, it took me a while, but I realized, like, oh, this is Harrison Ford, not Han Solo, and he is in other movies. And I feel like it opened me up for the first time to an awareness of what film is, and that, you know, movies exist as like a compilation of different actors and a director and all the different people working on it. And then for the first time I watched, you know, A New Hope, or really any of the other two Star Wars movies, I feel like that was when I started actually like liking movies as movies, and not just like, oh, I like The Lion King, or oh, I like The Little Mermaid, or something like that. So I feel like it really was the start of, you know, my life of liking movies. And maybe that is not a good reason to pick it as something that changed my life, but I think it is. I think that, you know, watching this movie for the first time, it started my love of Star Wars, and that alone is enough to be grateful for, just the fact that it exists. But it also started me liking movies in general, and I think that is definitely a good reason to pick it as changing my life, or have, you know, no movie has genuinely changed my life, but it definitely made an impact. Sorry, my memory card pulled up again. I really need to start keeping track of it, but I didn't think I would be filming over 40 minutes of video today. So number 19 is favorite quote from a movie. And for this one I have to go with another Paul Newman movie. It's The Hustler. And there's this scene where his character, Fast Eddie Felson, is talking to his girlfriend about what he feels like when he's shooting pool. And I'm gonna read this to make sure I get it right. And he says, you know, like, anything can be great. I don't care. Bricklaying can be great. If a guy knows. If he knows what he's doing and why, and if he can make it come off. And he goes on, he's talking about how he feels when he's shooting pool. But I've always loved that line, because he's saying that, I mean, bricklaying generally isn't, you know, considered the best occupation, like taking the most talent or the most education. But he's saying, even if you're a bricklayer, and if you really love bricklaying, and you honestly know why you're doing it, and you know what you're doing, and if you really love it, then it can be great. Even something like that can be absolutely beautiful if you're putting yourself into it, and you know exactly what you're doing, and you know why you're doing it. And it can be so much more than just bricklaying. And I've always loved this part because it's something that they may mention on a few more times in the movies. Just the absolute beauty and the serenity of doing something, and you don't even have to be spectacular at it. You don't have to be the best. But if you really honestly feel at peace with it, and you know why you're doing it, then it can be the best thing in the world. And I had a conversation about this with my political science professor, because there may be two other people in the class, and we were discussing, it was something about like labor or Marxism, and we brought up, you know, it's all well and good that people want to have really great jobs, but you're always going to have the people in society who have to do the basic labor. So what about them? And I brought up this movie, and I said something like that, and I was saying how it doesn't matter if you're doing menial labor. It can be a beautiful thing. If you genuinely love what you're doing, then it doesn't matter to you, you know, if you're some, like, famous scientist, or if you're just laying bricks, or you're just a construction worker, or something like that. And, like, people may look down on you, and people may think that, oh, you're just doing that for the sake of a job. You're doing it to get by. You can't actually enjoy that. But yeah, you can. You can love what you're doing no matter what it is. And I think I may be reading too much into this quote, or maybe you just have to watch the movie to genuinely get it, because I certainly can't recapture that scene here. But it's such a fantastic sentiment, and it's stuck with me ever since I've seen that movie. For the last question, this actually it is the last question. If you were to see a movie remade, what movie would you pick, and who would you pick to direct it? And I had a hard time with this one, because it seems like the last 10, 13 years, it has been the decade of remakes, or long overdue sequels, especially from the time period of the 70s and 80s, where I would be most likely to choose a movie to be remade. Like, I mean, they just redid The Thing. They made Prometheus, that's just like a sequel or the prequel to Aliens. They made the new Star Trek. They're making a new Mad Max. They made RoboCop, Total Recall. You know, they're making all of these movies from that specific era. So it was tough for me choosing a movie to be that I would want to see remade. And I'm pretty sure they're not making this, because I'm picking Escape from New York, you know, with Kurt Russell. It was directed by John Carpenter. It's in the 80s. I'm not sure what year it was made. But I think that would be an absolutely fantastic movie to be remade. I mean, I absolutely love the original. I mean, it's fantastic. It's very much an 80s movie. I guess it is very dated, but that's what makes it so fantastic, because it has such an 80s feel to it, and it's such a great movie. So I think that they could remake it, and the person that I would choose to remake it would be Quentin Tarantino, because I think that he would do it perfectly. He would have, like, the perfect mix of, like, older influences and modern stuff. And you have the perfect amount of, like, the gritty violence that he brings to his movies without really overdoing it. I mean, obviously he does overdo it a lot, but I think that if he did this movie, it would have, like, the perfect balance to it. And I think that would be absolutely spectacular. So, I mean, now I actually am kind of hoping that he is going to do that, even though I don't think he will. But it would definitely be a movie that I would watch. Okay, so for the last question, I'm coming up with my own question, and it is kind of similar to an earlier one, but it's something that I find really interesting. So, what book that hasn't been made into a movie already would you choose to be made into a movie? And, you know, possibly list a director if you want. You don't have to. For me, there's this author that I read a lot when I was, like, younger, teenage years. And her name was Tor Pierce, and she wrote, like, series of fantasy novels. So I would pick something by her. I would probably pick, honestly, I forget what this book's called. It's called, like, the Dane series or something. Like, these really cheesy books. But I feel like they would be great movies. And especially now, because I feel like it kind of would go along with kind of, like, you know, the Hunger Games feel of, like, what people are into now. So I would definitely pick something by Tor Pierce. And for a director of the movie, I'm not sure who I would choose to direct it. But I think that they would be absolutely fantastic if they could be made into movies. So that is it. I'm wrapping this up. And for my movie tag, I didn't mention in the beginning, but I am tagging Emily Wright. She has her channel, ThePhoenixRoost. And she's been my friend for, like, the past 5 years or so. So you can go over and check out her channel. I'm putting her link and TameLeo68 link in the bottom beneath here, along with a list of the questions.